be the man you'd want your daughter to marry. And that, I think, is like, for me, it's the blueprint and framework of how I live my life.
Fuck it, we're going live. Fuck it. Mock. Yeah. Ing. Yeah. Bird. Yeah. 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 Mockingbird. Everybody tell me, have you heard?
Have you heard?
She's gonna buy me a mockingbird. And if that mockingbird don't sing, she's gonna buy me a diamond ring.
Buy me a diamond ring.
Did it. We did it. Oh, look at us, brother. Welcome to the Billy Med Podcast. Become the strongest version of yourself. Mentally, spiritually, emotionally, and physically. I did hit record. Wanted to make sure that was in there, right? Man. So on the podcast today, we have none other than Michael DeSanti. We're going to call him Michael DeSanti. I think when we first met him, we were calling him Mike. We're going to call him Michael DeSanti.
And you know what? There's something with Mike's, or with Michael's rather. I just always assume it's Mike. Like, oh, you want to go by Mike. And
right,
I heard
like,
from someone after, they were like, by the way, after like a year of knowing them, they finally told me, like, yeah, I go by Michael. And I'm like, you dick. Like, you fucking piece of shit.
How dare you?
I know. It's like someone calling me Tony.
Right.
And like, fuck you.
Right. If you were gonna call yourself Tony, how would you spell it? Would it be Tony? T-O-N-I?
Tony Tone. I would totally have an I at the end. I don't deserve the Y.
I think you would right now.
I'm a Y guy.
So with me as always is my brother Tony. Good to see you again, Tone.
Yeah.
So my middle name is Michael.
That's cool.
Right? I don't know. That's something brand new to the podcast audience. I haven't shared my middle name yet with anyone. Mm-hmm. I figured now we're in an episode like
Dennis Michael Meralda.
Dennis Michael Meralda. But I don't say Dennis Mike Meralda.
No.
As a middle name, you would never say Mike.
No.
Ever, right? I would never say my name is Dennis Mike Meralda.
Dennis Mike, because it's a hard stop.
Right. Or Mikey. Or Mickey. Or
Mick. Dennis Mickey.
You know what? But when your name is Michael, all right, here we go. When your name is Michael, you have a decision to make there. You can say, call me Mike. You can go with this. So I might change my middle name to Mick. Dennis Mick Meralda.
The Mick.
All right, so we have our guest. He is the we're gonna bring it back here together. Okay. He is the founder of the Authentic Self Healing LLC. He does a program called Find Your Tribe, and he wrote a book called New Man Emerging. We had such a blast getting to know this gentleman. Welcome to the podcast, Michael DeSanti.
My name is Michael, and I don't think I've given it as much thought as you guys just gave it in the last minute and a half.
Never thought about it before, right?
Nah, love it.
But
you know what? There is a lot of versatility. There's a lot of versatility with Michael. I got a lot of options. I didn't realize I had all these options till now. I'm 41.
You could be a completely different person. You want to show up somewhere, and all of a sudden you're Mick. Like, I'm Mick DeSanti, and they're like, whoa,
hey,
holy shit.
Right, exactly.
Watch out for this guy, you know. I think it depends on what you're going for.
Right. Dennis doesn't have as much. You don't have as much leeway as.
So here's the thing with Dennis, right? So it's either Dennis, Den, or Denny. So my son is Denny, right? So I went by Dennis growing up because my mom called my dad Den. He was Den, I was Dennis. And then my cousins, I had cousins from my father's side of the family. They were also Meraldas. They called me Dennis Michael. It was the entire name, Dennis Michael. So it just flows so easily off the tongue, saying Dennis Michael all the time.
Dennis Michael,
get down here. Dennis Michael, get into the punishment chair. Dennis Michael. It was like the everything together. But I was like, you know what? Maybe I'm Dennis Mick.
Dennis the Mick.
Dennis Mickey Meralda. But here's the thing.
Maybe it's time to shorten that up. All those consonants.
My God, it's crazy. I'm so happy this happened today.
This is great.
I'm a new man.
That's right.
It's one of those things where
you're glowing, Dennis. You really.
This is the happiest I've been in quite some time. But you never see a middle name. If your middle name is Michael, it's always the full name because you don't think about it in those terms. But fuck that. I'm gonna do what I want to do. So your middle name is James. So you could be Tony Jimmy Meralda.
Tony Jimmy Meralda. That's right. Tony Jim.
Tony Jim. TJ. You could be
TJ. I can be TJ.
So you were.
All right. So we're gonna have Den Nick,
and Tony Jim
and TJ. Fuck.
We knew this episode was going to go off the tracks really quickly after we met Michael DeSanti. So you're a Jersey guy now. You're in South Florida, correct?
Correct. Yeah, born and raised in Jersey, but I live in Miami now. My wife and I are down here. I think 5 years.
All right.
5 years. So pre-COVID, I came down.
So is it one of those things like you can take the guy to Jersey, but you can't take the Jersey out of the guy?
It's a great question. I don't know. I've assimilated pretty well into Miami, I think. But when I'm around my Jersey guys, like when they come down to visit, I just have one of my best friends just moved here. When we get together, we just default right back because I don't think you can take that area out of you. It's its own unique biome, and it's its own language. If you're from there, that you just gravitate back to it like it's in your blood, man. You never get out of that. Absolutely. But I've assimilated well to the slower lifestyle down here. It fits my personality.
So we had Brian Panuzzo on, and now he's out in California, and he's eating spaghetti squash and all this shit out there, and where he's doing a lot of ball busting around it. But there is that thing when you get around Jersey guys, you get that little bit of
ball busting,
a little Godfather-ish, like cadence to what you're doing. Hey, what are you doing?
You're just calling each other out on their shit on everything that they do, and you don't realize it until you're around someone and they mention like, "Are you from Jersey?" Like I could just hear it in your voice. I'm like, "What the fuck? What are you talking about?
What are you talking about?
What are you talking about?"
Or they're like, "That was really hurtful."
Yeah.
What you just said about my balls.
Or they tell me
as you were busting them. That was hurtful to me. So
anytime you're right. Like anytime you're around other Jersey guys, it's almost like they're wearing a tray of gabagool, and you could just know it. You just see it right there. It's palpable.
So you're growing up in Jersey, then. What did your mom? What did she call as she made the Sunday dinner? It was tomatoes. It had some spices in it. What did she call it?
We're split. We're like a half gravy family, half sauce family.
Wow. Yeah, it's such a big question. So our grandmother, Dad's mom, called it gravy.
Yeah.
But then when my mom made it, it was spaghetti sauce.
Yeah, it was sauce, right.
And it was sauce. Spaghetti sauce.
Well, it's Sunday gravy. Everything else is sauce. So it's actually, for us, the day you ate it on determined if it was sauce or was gravy. All the ingredients could be the exact same, but it doesn't matter.
That makes
sense. If you
eat
it on Sunday, it's gravy. If you eat it any other day of the week, it's sauce.
So as much as you can without disrespecting your family name and your family crest, was there a specific ingredient in Sunday gravy that you can share with the
Don't answer that, Michael.
Oh, my God. No.
Don't you dare.
This is crazy because I do all the cooking in my family now. I do the Christmas Eve for 30 people, 7 fishes. I do Thanksgiving. I do all the cooking here in my house with my wife and I. So food's a huge thing for me. But I look back, and my grandmother used to use red pack tomatoes. And if I tasted them now, I'd be like, these are just sugar that's red. And for some reason, it was so amazing back then growing up. Now I would never use it. Now I've got to have like volcanic ash San Marzano tomatoes shipped from Italy for me. And my grandmother was going to like the 7-Eleven down the street because she never drove a car. And she would get red pack tomatoes. And anytime I'd say, "What's in here? This is delicious, Grandma," she'd go, "Salt and pepper." That was it.
Salt and pepper.
But she had that special touch, the love, that you can't, there's no...
Right? My brother used to say, nobody makes a ham sandwich like my grandmother, and it was just ham and toast. But it was the way she layered it, bro. Like, it was so distinct and unique to her.
That's so interesting. That brings me back to the way that when we would have our Sunday dinner. It would be football on TV, and the sauce would begin cooking. You could smell the garlic.
Right at it was like 10 or 9 o'clock in the morning. It would start.
Yeah.
It was definitely a tradition, and I'm like right now, I'm like
dip some bread in.
Well, here's where I was going to go with that with the bread. So our father, he lives pretty much on pasta. Bread, olives, beer, and wine on Sundays. Like once he was eating dinner, it was the wine. He works out like a fucking madman so he could eat all that shit, right? But I still remember we'd get the Italian bread. We're sitting down, and he'd cut the Italian bread and be like, "You want a piece of bread?" He would take a hunk of butter and just put it on top. Like there was no butter in the bread. It's just like a chunk of butter on top, and he'd hand it to you.
He wouldn't. So like you could leave butter out and let it soften. You know, like you could leave it out and actually let it, and so that you could actually spread it. He would have it in the fridge, and rather than letting it actually moisten a little bit, he would chop it with like a fucking chainsaw, so he'd get it, and it was a hunk that was like 3 servings, and he'd put it on, and it was like a butter sandwich. And he's like, "Here you go," and I'm like, "Wait, what the fuck is this?" And every time he would do that.
Dude, it's the impatience of butter, and then you take a bite out of that and butter be falling off.
Oh my God.
Pick it back up, put it back on. There's teeth marks in the cold butter. I mean, come on, man. Just 20 minutes, that thing's softening up.
I know.
The teeth marks in the butter, just the visual of that, because that's what it really was. Like you would bite into it, and you get like butter stuck on your teeth. It was like imprint on the
forensics could figure you out if you were dead just from your butter marks on your teeth.
Oh, and so here's the other thing. I don't know if I ever told you this story. Today's a big day of me telling you stories you never heard before.
I love this.
So I think I was probably 13 or 14 years old, and I was struggling for cash, you know. Maybe I was a little bit older. And I came home from school, and I asked Dad for money for something. It was before I was working. And he said, no. I'm not. We didn't get money in my family. Like, once we were able to work, like, legally, you were able, that was it. So I said, I'll make you a bet. I bet you I could eat a whole loaf of bread in, I forget what it was, a half hour. He's like, all right, I'll take the bet. So I did it. But I toasted it. So I toasted the bread and I buttered every piece. But it was like a large loaf of white bread.
Like the Marco's bread?
Like the huge loaf of bread. And I ate the whole fucking thing in a half hour. Like for $20.
What were you, for what? What did you need? Just to get more bread? You wanted to buy bread?
I needed more bread for the weekend. Right. Yeah, bread was like it was currency in our
big commodity.
Oh my! I love that you took all your earnings back to the bakery.
To the bakery, more bread.
Right.
I needed bread.
I'm going to Calandras with these winnings.
Well, we were out of bread, so I had to buy more bread.
The toaster, and I put everything in the toaster.
That's it. What you won?
I did. I won $20 from Dad, for the bread. I that's a good story. I should bring it up to him soon.
That.
So that's it. That's the end of our podcast. We hope we appreciate you guys joining us today for Building Men. We hit all the things we wanted to talk about. So. All right, so now bring us back to you're in Jersey, Sunday gravy. There's definitely a faster lifestyle as you're living in Jersey. Talk to us about what you were doing in Jersey, because I know you went on a journey where you were doing something in your life and you're like, I need to shift. I can't go down this route. And a lot of the people that are listening, that resonates with them, that they're going in one direction in their life and they feel like there's this predetermined path for them. And a lot of people are looking for that opportunity or the courage to shift and make a switch in their lifestyle, and both of us have done that. I know you have done that as well. So bring us back to that spot in your life where you decided to make that big shift.
Absolutely, man. It goes a little bit before that, which was like I grew up in North Plainfield, New Jersey, and then my family moved to Watchung, just a town over, but changed schools, and in that town we grew up on like an acre and a half. And I grew up with my father, who was like a big outdoorsman. We grew up on this acre and a half, and I just loved being outside. I loved nature. I loved hiking, and my father would take me hunting and fishing when I was a kid. And so I always had this like really adventurous spirit, and I loved nature. I loved being outside. And my father used to go hunting out in the Rocky Mountains and in British Columbia, Alaska. And as I got older, I was 14, I think, and he took me out to see the Rocky Mountains for the first time I ever saw them. And I just fell in love. And then when I was 17, I took a train across the country for 30 days. I don't know how my folks let me do this. I was only 17, and I took a train across the country, and went all over, backpacking Sierra Nevadas up to Seattle, and then woke up one morning in Glacier Park, Montana. And I woke up to this sunrise in Montana, and I was like, oh my God, I thought I died and went to heaven. Spent time exploring around Montana, got back on a train, took it back to Jersey. And I went back, and I was like, wherever that was, I need to go to school or live around there. So I filled out one application to the University of Montana. They accepted me 2 weeks later. I was like, sweet, that's where I'm going to school. Never even saw it. Bought a pickup truck, drove across the country, and just showed up to school one day just because I fell in love with the Rockies, with adventure, with just being outside. Now, fast forward like 4 years later, I graduate college, and I'm similar, like grew up, not a lot of money, lights were getting turned off. And we always struggled with money. And I met my uncle for the first time. He owned this really successful corporate travel event company. And he divorced my aunt the year that I was born, so I never met him, but he was like a legend in my family. And he gave me a job 3 days out of college. And he said to me, you want to travel, you're adventurous, I'm going to Las Vegas in 2 weeks, I'll pay you this amount, you want to go? And dude, I'm 22, and all I heard was Las Vegas. And I was like, yeah, oh man, you're going to pay me to go to Las Vegas? Dude, I'll go for free. So it started this relationship with my uncle, who became like a second father to me. He was like my dad, but with money. And I spent my 20s, he was grooming me to take over his company. So I had this, like, going from really not much financially to this super sound financial future. And in my mid-20s, I owned my own home, drove a Mercedes, was vice president of the company. Like, I was crushing it. But deep down, like, the more responsibility I got, the more the more I was growing in this company, like the more stressed out I was getting, and I was losing a lot of that adventurous spirit that I had. Like, I just felt like felt trapped, and he would give me more and more money actually made me feel more and more trapped and more stressed out. And then there was a time where my health was really suffering in my late 20s, and I was like, listen, man, like, I got to make some adjustments. I started to recapture my health. I started losing weight. I started to meditate. I started to, like, recapture, like, that young kid, that young adventurous spirit. And I got more and more involved with, nutrition and health and lifestyle and stress management and meditation and all these aspects of lifestyle that really make for a genuine, fulfilling lifestyle. And it started to show. And I was losing weight. I was energetic, and I was coaching people in my office, and then they were going home and coaching their husbands and their wives. And one day I was at a Christmas party for that company, and this gentleman walks over and he said to me, he's like, "Are you Michael? You've changed my life." And I didn't even know who he was. I was like, "How did I change your life?" "Well, we're just meeting." And he said, "My wife comes home. She tells me all these things you're telling her about nutrition, lifestyle, stress management. Last year I lost 50 pounds, won a contest in my company for the Biggest Loser, and I just got accepted to run the Boston Marathon at 50-something years old." Wow. And he's like, "I never thought that was possible." And this guy just kind of like altered my whole perspective of what I could be doing. Because when I was honest, I was making money, but I wasn't making any impact. And then when this guy said this to me, I was like, wow, this is really what I want my life to be about. This is really what I want my future to be about. And I had dinner with my uncle one night, and he was like, "Listen, it looks like your heart's not in this business anymore." And I was like, "Listen, if I could be honest, it's not." And he said to me, "What do you want to do? If you could do anything, what would you do?" And I said to him, I want to help people put their health and happiness back together. And his response was, "When that doesn't work out, I'll leave a position open for you at the company." But here's the thing. All I heard was, "Go for it." I heard, "Go for it." I was like, all right, you know what? That's as good as the answer I was going to get. So now I get to grab my balls, access courage, and I get to make something of this. Like, I've got a shot, and I cannot blow it. And I went home. I was driving home that day, and my mother called me, and she said, "How'd dinner go with your uncle?" And I said, "As well as could be expected." And my mother asked me that day, she's like, "What do you want? What do you want your life to be about and your future to be about?" And I was like, Ma, I want to be part of the solution. And right now I feel like I'm part of the problem. And that one like declaration, that one mantra changed the entire course of my life and the entire course of my future thereafter. And I stepped away little by little. I closed the gap. I started to coach people. I started to charge for it. And I just started diving deeper and deeper into development, personal development, health, wellness, well-being, mindset, until the next thing you know, like I was able to step away and create something. Like I look back over a decade ago, I can't believe what I created from, just that one day saying I got to become part of the solution.
I'm picturing Vito Corleone having a conversation. Don't ever disrespect the family. Like something like that with your uncle. What you heard was fucking do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's a huge moment, especially in an Italian family where there was this idea that he's grooming you to take this over. He's giving you the lifestyle, the riches, which it resonates with us without a doubt. In an Italian family, it was about the work ethic, and it was about the show, what it looked like from the outside. You have this type of house, this type of car. You go on this vacation.
I have, these things that I can give to you, right? So that was so much of it.
So to have the courage to get to that point where you're like, I'm going to do this. I want to have significance in my life, not just this, way that it looks from the outside. So you had, I'm going to call it like the D. Snyder moment. That's what I'm going to call it. It was like, your mom was like, what do you want to do with your life? And you're like, I want to rock.
Yep.
That's how I'm picturing it. And all of a sudden,
that's
it's
exactly.
Like,
That's perfect.
The first Twisted Sister reference in the history of Building Men podcast today. Why not?
Perfect.
Breaking down all barriers that exist in our path.
Nailed it.
All right, so now you make this decision. I need to do something. I need to live this life of significance and meaning. And once you make that decision, what are the next steps in your mind? So now there's a guy comes up to you at a party. Michael, I've been watching you outside of your window. You don't even realize it. I noticed your six pack. I've noticed the way you look in your boxer briefs.
My body looks different after watching you.
I don't want to minimize
it was weird because he said my favorite underwear that you wear are the Hunter Orange ones. Oh, interesting. That you know that.
Okay, you take a step back. Yeah.
Little do you know, I don't wear underwear, friend.
Gotcha. I don't wear underwear.
So now you have this moment where this man comes up to you, and he just felt a level of gratitude. Like, I just want to share with you what a difference you've made on my life. But what was actually happening was he was giving you this validation that you're going in this direction. I need to fucking do this. So while you helped him, I'm sure he had that same level of significance in you moving forward.
Without even really knowing it, like not even knowing the impact that was going to make, because it was exactly that. It was validation. It was the evidence of the result. And I was like, wait, there's something to this. Now imagine I could make this level of impact, and imagine I could be profitable doing it. Because a lot of my financial narrative, especially watching like my father, struggle. He was great at what he did, but he struggled making, profit from it. And so for me, I always thought passion and profit were two radically different things. They couldn't go together. And so this guy, the light bulb that he kind of ignited in me is I could take my passion and connect it to profit. And for me, that was like some radical new theory, because I always thought you just grind, bust your ass, like you guys said, like create the identity, get the stuff, and somehow that was going to fix everything else. But the more and more I was doing that, the more, like I said, the more and more trapped I felt. And I was building this identity, but I felt like my character was actually suffering in the process of it. And I had to reconcile it some way. So this guy, he validated a lot of this, where I was trending to, what I wanted to do with my life and what I wanted to use those resources for. Now I make this bold declaration like D. Snyder, but a lot of times people are like, oh, what did, like, you had this biblical moment and then life became easy. Like, bro, Dude, I ended up losing my house. I had to foreclose on it. I sold all my stuff. My bank account got down to $1.11 when I built my business. So I was like, hell or high water, I'm going to make this happen, because I didn't want to go back. I didn't want to go back to this like spiritless state that I was in. So I just went all in on this commitment to make an impact. And little by little, I learned more and more about coaching and marketing and branding and really connecting with people and helping them with frustrations and pain points. And the more and more I did that, the more traction I gained.
And the cool thing is that you had, I heard you talk about it on a podcast with Austin Linney about the second circle, I believe you called it. You know, like the impact that you make immediately, or the connection that you make immediately, you don't even understand the next level or that next ripple effect that it can make. So talk to us a little bit about what that means to you, that second circle.
It's very similar with this gentleman. Like, he was in my second circle. My first circle is family, friends, my people that I know, people that know me, like me, trust me. They're in my circle. But the second circle are the people that I don't know, but I'll know through my first circle. So my first circle, they know me, they like me, they trust me. So if they're talking about me to people that I don't know, that I consider my second circle. I built my entire business on my philosophy of second circle. Like, this woman's husband, I could have coached him. If she was to connect me with him, he would be an ideal client. And what I started to do to build my business, I didn't do let me become some big influencer on social media and get some crazy following. I was just asking friends and family in my first circle, do you guys know anyone that I don't that's interested in what I'm up to? And what started to happen is that circle of people that know, like me, and trust me, it just kept growing and growing and growing. So now I was connected to their second circle, coaching them, getting results. And then now they're in my first circle. Hey, you know anyone that's interested in what I'm up to? Can you connect us? Can you put us together? And then that's actually organically how my business grew, especially I'd say in the first 5 years.
So speaking of influencers and people that motivate and make a difference, how would you describe to us Tony Robbins' hands?
I would say a stack of 5 unripe bananas that can still do some damage if waved at a high velocity.
Wow, I've never heard that before, and that's beautiful, Michael.
You should see my notes as we're doing this. I wrote down "Twisted Sister." Describe Tony Robbins' hands.
This is the most unorthodox list of notes that we've ever had. I can't even.
I'm like, how do I find a way to get Tony Robbins' hands into this conversation? Come hell or high water, that's going to happen.
God damn it. I'm going to make sure it's in there.
That was beautiful. I hopefully Tony's listening to this. And if he's not, if you have a direct line to Tony Robbins, please share that with him. I would take that as a compliment.
Absolutely.
5 unripened bananas that can do some fucking damage, without a doubt.
Shit.
I mean, you could.
Mine have been known as soft number 2 pencils. I think people have said my hands are like
flaccid, al
dente noodles. That's right. Oh, Jesus Christ.
There's so many places we can go with that. Not to mention some homosexual porn titles as well.
I'm sure there's a bunch of avenues.
But we do a good job of bringing it back. We're like a boomerang. We could throw this shit out there and it's always going to come back.
You're making it hard for us though, because we're going.
So, and that's one of the first lines in the porn that I was just talking about as well.
That's right.
That's one of the first lines that
was the first porno I was
that
in.
Buck Naked said. Yeah. So. When we're in this spot where you're like, okay, I have $1.11. I don't have a pot to piss in. You bet on yourself, and it doesn't look like it's going to go the way that you thought or in the right direction. What next? Like, what are the next steps? Because that's where we find ourselves when there's this moment where you're like, okay, I bet on myself. I believe in my mission, my significance. I'm called to this larger thing, and I put everything towards it. And my house got foreclosed upon. I don't have money. I don't the lights are getting shut off. now what? What do you do at that point?
Everything's working against you.
What's the next step?
Yeah.
How do you keep it going? And then how do you find that momentum that's like, okay, now I see where I'm going again in the future?
Yeah, I mean, in short, I would say I was all in committed, and I eliminated any distractions that would keep me from that. So I had this like burning desire of impact, right? Impact through healing, mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally. I had this burning desire to make an impact. Then I took that burning desire to make an impact in the future, and I just brought it back to here and now. What's one thing I could do today that advances me forward? What's one thing I could do now that advances me forward? So I got clear on the big picture, but I didn't obsess over the big picture. I wasn't attached to the big picture, because if I did, I would just be like, oh, one day I'm just going to sit here and, power of positive thinking. Somehow I'm going to manifest that. I was like, no, I've got to take that and bring it into here and now, and then take every day as an opportunity to make an advancement, even if it's just by an inch. Make the phone call. Be willing to hear no. Be willing to get rejected. Have people not be interested. But every day I was like, who can you connect me with? Post something, get traction, and then start to look at these little interactions as potential, these little interactions as possibility. And what started to happen was, I started to realize that I told you guys I built my business on my philosophy of second circle, and then I built it on what I call the law of ratio. What I started to find was, for every 10 discovery calls that I made with people, 7 or 8 would say, yeah, I'm in. So I used to have this like major fear of rejection. Like, I know this person wants to work with me or wants to do a discovery call, but I was so afraid of rejection. Like, what if they say no, that I would do a ton of other things instead of like actually booking the call. And then I started to realize, like, wait a second, if I start to look at, for every 10 people I talk to, if 2 or 3 say no, that means 7 or 8 are going to say yes. So I started to shift my entire way of thinking into, I want to hear no. The more I heard no, the more it actually shifted my perspective of, there's another yes right down the road. So I started to eliminate the distractions of the fear of rejection and what if I fail, what if I mess up? And I just started to radically shift my focus on, no, let's go hear no, because for every no, there's at least 4 or 5 yeses. And I just started to build my practice and my business on that law of ratio. Let me just talk to 10 people, and that means 7 or 8 are going to say yes. And I, little by little, month after month, that was really the simple system that I used.
You hear so many people now talk about manifesting positive things in their life and the power of positivity, which is excellent. I mean, I truly believe you have to have that mindset and see the things as they come about. Like, you have to visualize yourself doing it, but it doesn't mean jack shit unless you back that up with the work. You have to start working like it's already happening. And if you don't fully believe in it in that really passionate way, and it's in a passive way, it's not going to happen, because you're not backing it up with your actions based on that. The other thing you said is the idea of one day. That was me for 15 years. It was one day I'm going to do this, one day I'm going to do that, until the day became fucking today. Today's the day.
Yep. Today's the day. There's one of the early chapters in my book is called The Myth of One Day. Like, we put so much stock and obsession and attachment into, like, one day everything's going to work out. I'm like, no, it's not. That is a myth. What you're doing today, what you're taking action on today, what you're advancing today, where you're accurate today, is what influences and shapes tomorrow. So if you're doing nothing today, but you've got this great awareness and $4 will get you a cup of coffee. It doesn't mean anything. And so a lot of my philosophy is, like, awareness is great, but it's only half of it. I've got to have, okay, I've got this vision, excellent, get clear, make sure it's a clear roadmap. But awareness plus action is what equals advancement. So the committed action, accurate action, that's what has us move the ball forward. So I could sit here and think all day long about how great my life is going to be. But if I'm not taking accurate, committed action today, it's just a pipe dream.
And shit, you said, that and the $4 will get you a cup of coffee. That and $4 was like three and a half times what you had in your bank account how many years ago. You know what I mean? When you think about it in those ways.
Totally.
So you brought up the book. So your book is called New Man Emerging. Talk to us a little bit about where the inspiration for the book came from, and then the process. I'm really interested in the process that you went about to create this work.
When in 2015, I lost my father. He died of pancreatic cancer. And I wanted to write I remember telling my publisher, I want to write a book about my dad. And I remember her saying, wait a year, because it's still so fresh. Like, wait a year and then see what it evolves into. So I waited a year. I waited 2 years. I actually waited 3 years. But I wanted to write a book for men, and I wanted it to be somewhat based around or themed around, me losing my father. Because me losing my father was really like the catalyst of like, wow, one day is not happening. Everything I want to create, I've got to put focus into now. So one day, I was in bed. It was in the middle of the night. My wife, she was my fiance at the time. I think we were engaged at the time. And I woke up in the middle of the night, and these words just came to me. And I couldn't go back to sleep. So I walked into my office, wrote them down, went back to sleep. It happened again the next night. Then it happened again the next night. And so finally my wife was like, yo, what are you doing in the middle of the night? Where are you going? It's like, I don't know. These words are coming to me.
What are you doing with all those unripe bananas? What's going on with all the bananas?
What the hell kind of sick shit are you into?
Why is there a hand of bananas under your pillow?
And you crudely pasted a picture of Tony Robbins on the back.
Right. And then I was like, and so right there, I was like, don't worry, hon, I'm writing a book. That's what it's for.
Writing a book.
So the bananas help me stay up at 3 o'clock at night to write down what's coming to me. So in all honesty, so I read what I wrote to her, and she's like, wow, you need to write a book. And later that day, we go to my mom's house. She's only an hour north of Miami. And my wife, or my fiance at the time, was like, read to your mom what you read to me. I read it to my mother, and my mother was like, you need to write a book. And I was like, oh man, the two most important women in my life are telling me I need to write this book. I didn't really have the bandwidth at the time to sit down and write a book, but I was like, yo, I'm waking up in the middle of the night anyway. I'll just write this book, from the inspiration I get in the middle of the night. I'll write down whatever comes, and I'll just go back to sleep. And I was like, I don't care, however long that takes. So the moment I said to my wife and to my mother, okay, I'll do it, all of that middle of the night inspiration just dried up. And I was like, you've got to be kidding me. So, but I had just told the two most important women in my life that I was going to write the book. Yeah. So I was like, I got to follow through on that. So now, at the time, I don't know if you guys have ever read the book Conversations with God by Neil Donald Walsh. It's a great book, changed my life when I was a kid. And at the time, my wife changed her life too. My wife hires him to be our coach. Like, we're big fans, obviously, of coaching. So for the next, 90 days, the author of Conversations with God and 30 other books is our coach. And he says to me, what are you up to? Like, what's your next endeavor? And I said, I just promised my wife and mother that I was going to write a book. And he said, when's it going to be done? And I don't know why, but I threw out this arbitrary date of October 1st. And he was like, great. I've written 30 books. Rule number 1, form a deadline. Rule number 2 to writing a book, keep the deadline, never move it. And I was like, how about January? Like, nope. You said October 1st. So I was like, oh my God, I just promised my mother and my wife that I'd write this book. And then I just promised like one of my author idols that I'd write this book. So that being said, or that kind of as the conditions, I sat down every morning at the same time every day. No distractions. This was my writing time. Sometimes nothing came, sometimes a lot came, but the consistency and the commitment over time to that distinct window, right around halfway through, because I wanted to write a book that was about 50,000 pages. right around half of that, 25,000 words. Excuse, not 50,000 pages.
I was going to say that's the longest book in the history of the world.
Yeah.
It's like
it's War and Peace times 8.
You need a special wing in your house just for the book.
Yeah. They ship it to you on a backup.
You know what? Most podcasts they would gloss over that. You two Jersey guys, like, there's no way.
Are we going to address this? Who's going to say it?
Who's going to say it?
Who's calling
this up? So I sat down every day, and this was like my deliberate writing time. Even the days I didn't want to do it, the days I thought nothing was coming, I just sat there. Even if I just stared at the screen. But right around halfway, 25,000 words, I was like, "There's momentum here." And the second half just was like butter, room temp butter, not your dad's frozen butter. The second half was super easy. And then he made a deal. Neil Donald Walsch made a deal with me that if I finished it by the deadline, I sent him the manuscript. He'd read it, and if he liked it, he'd give it to his publisher.
Wow,
that's how it happened.
That is great.
That's amazing.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
It's so cool.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So that book, you mentioned the thing about the one day. If I don't know if it's like picking out your favorite kid in a lineup or something, or was there a chapter that you wrote, or even just a phrase that you're like, as you look back on it, you're like, that really spoke to me, or this was a really special spot in that book that was transcended for me in some way?
You know, actually, I'll going back to Neil Donald Walsch. He had said, he's like, the most profound line in the whole book is from a chapter that I call Be Her Hero. And the first line in that chapter is, be the man you'd want your daughter to marry. And that, I think, is like, for me, it's the blueprint and framework of how I live my life. Like, when I'm alone, like, I'd want my wife to be proud of what I was doing, even though if she's not here. I want to be the man that I would look at, and my daughter would be like, that's who I want you to marry. And I think if there's incongruencies between how I'm showing up and that image of who I would want my daughter to marry, I've got to clean up those incongruencies. That's on me. And so I think that line is a framework for a lot of men to really see, like, where am I incongruent, and how do I now, clean and polish that up?
Being a father of 3 and 2 girls, that speaks to me. Because if you're not living in a way that you would want your daughter to bring home a man that is exhibiting those same characteristics, that's a deep dive right there. And I'll be honest, there were times in my life that I was not proud of that man who I was. If my daughter brought home a guy that was like, in my mindset, the way I was for such a period of time, I'd be like, who the fuck is this guy? He's passive, he's weak, he's not worthy of my daughter, right? And so that spoke to me.
You need to be able to face yourself in that light as well when that happens, right? Because so much of us, I think, push our own needs to the back burner and aren't even willing to address these issues that are going on in our lives. So for you to say that statement, right, you need to be confident and grounded and clear in the man that you are, and a lot of us aren't. We won't even address half the shit in our life. We just keep masking it over with other shit to, cover up who we really are in that place.
Yeah, it takes a ton of courage, man. Like, because here's the thing, right? Like, I look back, the reason I wrote that chapter is I look back on my old relationships, and a lot of my old relationships were just built on attraction, but it was like roller coasters of emotions, right? And I remember I was like, I've got to clean up my participation in relationships, because I'm not bringing this honorable, trustworthy man to these relationships. So I spent years, by myself, like, correcting these things in myself. And then when I met my now wife, I remember her, she said to me once, or wrote it actually first, and she wrote, "You're my hero." And I was like, oh my God, that's the first time in any relationship where my wife, my significant other, was like, "You're my hero. You're the standard." And I remember thinking, like, wow, that took a lot of work. But really what I found, what it takes is, like, if I'm living my life at a 6 or a 7, and I want to live my life at a 10, I have to have the courage to face my inadequacies at 8, at 9 so that I could get to 10. I've got to have the courage to face those inadequacies, to really turn and look with honesty and shed some light on those corners that I try to keep hidden with shame or with guilt or with all of this garbage and all of this upbringing that I don't want to face. Like, we've got to face it, because as we face those inadequacies, it propels us to the next level, and then to the next level, and to the next level. So there's a reward with facing those inadequacies, but we got to have the courage to face them.
I think about, you guys will remember hearing this. There was that, like, the crazy hot scale with girls. Like on the y-axis, it's how crazy they are, and on the x-axis is how fucking hot they are. And there's that idea that there's the to be on the one axis where they're smoking hot and not crazy whatsoever, they're totally fucking cool. It's like a unicorn.
It's
like
unheard
to find, usually as you go up the scale, like what's going to actually happen. So you're looking for someone in this specific quadrant. And I'll bring it back to what you did, Michael, is you found a way to, by facing your shit, by dealing with those demons in your closet and looking at who you truly were and being vulnerable enough, you were able to find the financial freedom and success, but also the passion. So like everything met up in that like unicorn way. Like you were able to do both of those things where it's, it's like finding the super hot girl that's,
Listen, I rate my girls in 0s and 1s, so I don't know what the hell you're talking about.
They're either three bills or less than 3 bills.
That's right. They got a pulse. Yup. No, but it really, like, you were willing, it's all about sacrifices, right, on both ends. So, like, what are you know that you need to sacrifice some things in order to gain the things that you want to, because you had a vision and you saw what the potential was in that, versus on the other end of things, you sacrifice maybe the time that you're spending with your family and giving up your passions in order to make money. But now you have to sacrifice the money aspect of it in order to follow your passions and be the man that you want to be. Both have sacrifices. It just depends on which one is more valuable to you. And a lot of people don't want to do the one that you followed because they're scared of that first 5 years of being broke and having nothing, So it's really, I commend you for that, because it's fucking hard.
I appreciate it. And I think I think you nailed it too, is like, there's no way around the sacrifice. But when you look at, and I think a lot of times when people are so short-sighted, I always distinguish pleasure from gratification. Pleasure is like, it's just I'm meeting an immediate need or immediate sensation. There's no sacrifice to it. Like, it'd be pleasurable for me to sit and eat cupcakes all day, never get out of my pajamas and watch TV. Like, I admit that's pleasurable. But gratification is, I eat clean, I go to the gym, I move my body, I go to sleep at a certain time. With gratification, it requires sacrifice. Pleasure doesn't. But if we get caught in these immediate pleasure cycles, like we miss out on all this opportunity and possibility and potential that comes with reward and with gratification later on. And I always say, like, if you do something out of integrity, like the pleasure of it is short-lived, but the pain of it is long-lived. And when you do something in integrity, the pain of it is short-lived, but the pleasure of it, the reward of it, is long-lived. And I think that's a huge barometer for us to really be, being aware of in the context that we live our lives.
What I've noticed too is, as for myself, going through this renaissance, like a rediscovery period in my life where changed so many different things, going through a divorce, changing my career path in my life in my 40s, or who fucking does that, right? What I've recognized is, people that I associated with before, as I was married, and you just find this group of men that you hang out with because it's socially acceptable. The wives were friends, the husbands were friends. We had, the kids were all hanging out playing basketball, whatever. But as I've stepped away from it, it slowly kind of dissipated. Where I'm like, oh, I wonder what happened to this guy. I used to hang out with him all the time. Now I haven't heard from him in 6 months, and you start to recognize the uncomfortable feeling that is associated with that. But men do need that tribe with them. They need that level of brotherhood, the level of accountability, the level just being able to fucking sit back and talk about, bullshit. Be able to do that, but do it in a way where you're being real and authentic. So talk to us a little bit about the idea of finding your tribe. Where did that idea come from, and talk to us a little bit about the structure of that idea.
So that actually started, that was also a chapter in my book called Find Your Tribe. And what I actually, speaking of what you just said, right? I started to notice that in the cultural conversation around men tend to isolate, right? Because we have this cultural narrative of like, figure it out on your own. Don't let people see you sweat. Make sure you don't mess up. Like, yo, how the hell are we ever going to succeed if we don't take risks, if we don't mess up? But we're at this like friction in a cultural narrative of be successful and don't mess up. Like there's no way, it's a trap. So I lived a lot of my life with, when in the chapter I call Find Your Tribe, that men need other men to fill three positions of their life. The first position is you need mentors, you need elders, you need you need men that you look up to, men that you aspire to be like, men that have accomplished something you desire to accomplish, whether that's, a thriving marriage or success, financial freedom. Men need men to look up to, mentors, coaches, people we aspire to be like that we want to match and mirror. The second, position that needs to be filled is we also need like men that are in the trenches with us, like comrades in it with us. Like we're at the same pace. We're doing the same thing. We're up to the same things. Like we need guys in the trenches with us, side by side. That's where, okay, like we motivate each other. We compete in a healthy way. We compete with each other. We're up to the same things. We're trying to build the same businesses or marriages or relationships. And then the third position is a man needs someone that he gives back to, the things that he's learned, that he's overcome, the wisdom and the personal agency and power that he's attained. You've got to give it back to the men that are aspiring to be where we are now. And I think when you have men in those three areas of your life, men you look up to, men that are side by side with you, and men that you're supporting and helping and coaching, that's when I think a man feels the most fulfilled in his tribe. And so by, that philosophy, that's how I created the online course, Find Your Tribe. It's a 12-week program that I bring men through so that they have that community with other growth-minded men that are in the trenches with them.
It's phenomenal, and it's so needed right now, especially during the last year and a half. We've definitely all sacrificed those relational pieces in our lives and felt disconnected, not only to loved ones, to ourselves, but to other men in that capacity. And I think you hit the nail on the head. I think it's perfect to say it, like looking to someone for guidance, going through shit with that brotherhood, and then turning around and reaching your hand down and helping someone up that's a step or two behind. And it doesn't necessarily have to do, in my opinion, with age. I'll be 45 years old. I could look to someone who's younger than me as a mentor. It's just the experience. It's going through that specific experience that you could look to someone for guidance and advice.
Without a doubt, yeah. There's men that are in Find Your Tribe that are well older than I am. Yeah.
So, Michael, tell us where we can find you, how we can get in touch with you and follow along on your journey.
So everything, all my offers are on michaeldesanti.com. So my book is on there. Find Your Tribe is on there. One-on-one personal coaching. And then you could also find another website, another business that I have is a retreat company called The Vital Guide. And thevitalguide.com. I take, my business partner and I take groups to Montana every summer. We've done Costa Rica. I think we're going to add Peru and the Grand Canyon. And these are weeks that people get away, but they're all adventures, cultivated adventures for growth-minded people that want to grow, they're committed to growing, and they form tribe out there as well. So those are the places you can find me. Instagram, Mike_DeSanti, and any way I could support you or your audience, doors open.
Absolutely. Tony, Jimmy, any final thoughts? Tony,
TJ, that was probably the hardest I've laughed on a podcast in a really long time, so thank you for that. But so before we leave, what's one thing that you could tell the Building Men audience that tomorrow they can do to, let's say they're entrepreneurs, or, you know, they're at a spot in their life where they want to kind of tweak things, or they're looking to start this, you know, write a book or do any of these things, what's one thing maybe you could tell them that could help get them on that path tomorrow that they can do?
Wow, that's a great question. Be honest with where you're at. Stop lying. Stop omitting things. Stop inflating things, and be radically honest with where you're at and where you really truly desire to get to. Eliminate the shame of wanting. Eliminate the shame of desiring. Get clear on what it is that you want, but be radically honest about where you are and where you truly want to get to. And I'll add something into that, is no matter where you are, I think to continue to grow, to continue to expand, to build what you want to build, be your word. Be your word. Follow through on your promises. Treat your word as though it's your commodity, that it's your currency. Be your word. Do what you say you're going to do. And as you do that, and that's your currency, and you keep following through on your word, you develop resilience, and that resilience develops self-esteem. So if you say you're going to do something, do it. And that eliminates procrastination and distraction and self-sabotage. My word is my currency. So if I say I'm going to do something, I do it. And no matter where you're at in that journey, like, that's one of the most essential building blocks, is honesty and integrity. Be your word.
A lot there. Just to we learned a lot today. We learned a lot. I mean, as I look back on the last hour, we learned about spaghetti sauce, about the temperature of butter, about the ripeness of bananas. We interviewed the person, the man who wrote the longest book in the history of the world, 50,000 pages.
That's right.
Tolstoy's got nothing on me.
It's ridiculous.
Tolstoy's jealous.
We also learned about Twisted Sister, Dee Snider, and it was truly an honor to spend the last hour or so with you, Michael. And so we'll put all the information into the show notes for your book and for your website. I know you were recently on Construct Your Life with Austin Linney, and I guess we're in a competitive space here, because we're going to be doing a men's retreat in Lake Tahoe at the end of April, beginning of May, called The Hero's Journey. We'll get information about that out there. But Austin committed to buying 30 copies of your book and giving them out to the gentleman who signed up for our program called The Hero's Journey. So that's out there in the universe right now as well.
Awesome. Appreciate that.
So to find Building Men is building.men on Instagram, buildingmencoach@gmail.com. Our website is buildingmen.io. We have two sponsors right now. It's Finish the Race Apparel, FTRapparel.com, and Become Stronger Industries. Paik McNally is a guy that we've just were introduced to, who makes handmade steel maces that are fucking badass. So we'll put some information about that out there as well. So on behalf of Tony Jim, I am Denny Mick signing off. Building Men, go a step further than you thought you could go. We'll see you next time on Building Men.